This week on the grill, we're going all the way down to South America, one of the birthplaces of the world's greatest barbecue, to learn the simple and flavor-packed dish of picanha. Being a live fire fanatic like I am, I absolutely love South American dishes. They're simple yet packed with flavor. They use some of the greatest ingredients and have some of the greatest flavors you've ever had in your entire life. Today's really special as we're cooking picanha, but not just any picanha. Today we have a Snake River Farms picanha, one of the best picanhas on the market. It's Wagyu, it's packed with flavor. It doesn't require hardly any preparation at all. Really excited to get into this. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this package of the picanha over. It's probably not gonna need a lot of trimming. We're just gonna do some real basic shaping to make sure it's where we want it to be. We're gonna cut it into sticks and we're gonna put it on the grill. Now, if you've been to some really popular restaurants like Texas de Brazil, a lot of times they'll cut these picanhas into really thick steaks and skewer them on swords, and they'll put them over the fire. I love cooking that way, but you kind of have to cook that way when you have a lot of people present, because as you put them on swords and cook them, you shave off that meat and serve it. If you're doing it all in one shot, it's a little hard because you don't want to end up overcooking the meat on the outside to get the inside meat done. So we're going to go ahead and do steaks today. It's the most approachable way to do it, and frankly I think it's one of the best ways to do it. We're going to put it over live fire on the Hastings behind me over some really hot South American charcoal and get some great flavors with nothing but meat and salt. Now, what you have to remember when you're cooking Wagyu is that the melting point of Wagyu fat is actually lower than the human body temperature that we have. So the fat melts very quickly. One, that means you got to handle it fairly quick so the fat doesn't melt off. And two, that means you have to account for that when you're actually cooking the meat. Now you have all this Wagyu fat. Now you can actually see it melting just under my hand temperature right here, which means we want to deal with it pretty quick. We're going to flip it over and we're just going to trim up the bottom side of this skin. Now you can see some silver skin on the side here, and we just kind of want to get under that silver skin with our knife and begin to trim it back, because we want as much of the meat exposed as possible when we go ahead and season this thing. Now we're only seasoning today with flaky kosher salt. We don't want anything to mask the flavor of this meat. We just want to accentuate it. We want to make the meat the star, because when you buy a really nice piece of meat like this, the last thing you want to do is cover up all that flavor with some cheap seasonings. Come in under here, just begin to tear off these little layers of fat and these little layers of silver skin. Now you don't have to go all out and go to Snake River Farms to buy a piece of picanha. A lot of times your local butcher can carry it. It's very similar to tri-tip, although it's definitely not the same cut. It's cut off the sirloin, it's buried deep inside the cow, and it packs some of the most beefy flavor out of the entire animal. Now again, because this is a very expensive cut of meat, we want to take off just the very least amount possible to be able to get the product we want. We don't want to be carving pounds of trim off this. Now silver skin you can obviously toss, but this fat makes great sausage. If you ever want to make sausage at home, you can save all those trimmings, turn them into something delicious. Almost done. Now the only thing we have to worry about is cutting this into steaks. Now I like to cut my steaks just like I do ribeyes or anything else. I go about 1.5 inches thick. The one thing you want to remember when you're cutting picanha into steaks is you want your initial cut of a steak to be with the grain. That way when you grill it and someone goes to cut into it, they're cutting against the grain and getting the most tender bite of meat. So we're going to find the grain on this picanha. You can see it's running this way. You see the muscle fibers running that way. So we're going to cut with the grain. This is absolutely beautiful right here. Now what I want you to see, and this is the difference between picanha you may buy from something like Snake River Farms and picanha that you may buy at your local grocer, is this picanha is Wagyu. So you can see this absolutely phenomenal marbling that's all the way throughout. Now some people may be tempted to cut that fat off. That fat is the flavor, especially with Wagyu. It's going to melt off on the grill. But this fat cap on the picanha is what makes it absolutely so rich, so popular. It's going to caramelize. It's going to have a crunch to it. My mouth is watering just looking at these raw steaks. Can't imagine what it's going to be like when we get it on the grill. We're going to go ahead and season it up now. And again, we're going very, very simple with our seasoning. So we're just going to use a pinch of salt. Traditionally, most South American recipes are only going to call for something like flaky or kosher salt. We'll hit both sides, let that salt do the work. There's nothing to tenderize because this meat's almost jello as it is. Press that in a little bit. Flip these steaks over. And just a touch more salt. You can even see that fat melting on the board as it is. That's how Wagyu fat acts. Now these are going to go extremely hot on the Hastings behind me. Like I said, we're using some South American charcoal today. It gets extremely hot, extremely fast. It burns white hot. We're going to get some flames lapping up on these things. We're going to pull them when they're medium rare. About 130 degrees is as far as I want to take these. I want to let the flame do the work. I want to let that fat melt and render. You can put them on a flat top or a skillet if you'd like, but I really want to get that smoke in it. So I've got that good lump charcoal burning real hot. I've got some extra oak wood thrown on it so you get some smoke in the fire. We're going to put these things on and let them dance in the flames. Alright, these picanhas are off the grill. Now we cooked them really hot and fast over some really live flame, and the goal was to render all that fat, to crisp it up, to get the inside cooked to a medium rare, and to just make this whole thing fire-kissed. Let's see how they turned out. What we can see is this fat has a wonderful char mark on the outside of it. They're nice and tender. You can see where the grain lies on these, so we can just cut directly against the grain. Top that with just a little bit of kosher salt. And I'm also going to take a little bit of this chimichurri. We're going to go ahead and put that right on top of one of these pieces as well. I want to see how this turned out on its own first though. My goodness. That may be the beefiest bite of beef I've ever had in my entire life. It has that fire roasting on it. It's just punch you in the face amount of beef. And we'll try it with some chimichurri on it to kind of add some acid to that beef to cut the beef flavor. Try to level everything out. What you can see is we've achieved a perfect medium rare on the middle with that fat cap on the outside. It's got the fire kiss. It's got the fat melt. Now, if you want to go over the top, grab yourself a Snake River picanha. If not, swing on down to your local butcher, get a regular old picanha. Choice grade or above is what I recommend. Prime's even better. You can do the skewers, you can do the swords if you want, but something like steaks over a really, really, really hot fire is just going to put this thing over the top. I guarantee you it's going to be a crowd pleaser. It'll become one of your favorite meals just because of the overwhelming amount of beef flavor you get out of that steak. It's probably one of the steakiest bites you've ever had in your entire life. I'm telling you, they're onto something here in South America when they can take really good high quality beef, kosher salt, and something like chimichurri, which is really just a bunch of herbs and oil and vinegar, and do amazing culinary things with it. My crew is going to go nuts for it. Thanks for joining us this week and every week. Mash that subscribe button. Follow us on social media at Hasty Bake Grills. We'd love to have your input on what you guys want to see next. Until next time, keep the fires going.